Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break. We're pleased to have you join us, and we're thrilled to be joined by Baiju Shah, lawyer, consultant, entrepreneur, biotech investment leader, innovator, corporate and philanthropic board member, and perpetual lover of all things Cleveland. Baiju Shah found the perfect place to contribute his multiple talents in spring 2021 when he took the helm at Greater Cleveland Partnership, the largest metropolitan chamber of commerce in the country with over 12,000 members. From starting Bulldog/Summer on the Cuyahoga in 2002 to address a brain drain in Cleveland, to launching the Cleveland Innovation Project to propel the region's growth in 2019, Baiju is committed to driving solutions to ensure Cleveland's success, but never alone. He appreciates that we are stronger together, and he masterfully builds collaborations and partnerships across sectors that are not known for their collaborative dispositions. It's exemplified by his work at Bioenterprise, Biomotive, the Innovation Project, the Talent Alliance, and to secure funding through Build Back Better. And spend a few moments with him and you will hear his all-in mantra for CLE and GCP. As he said at the City Club, all in is where it starts, and all in is what it takes to accelerate growth and prosperity. There must be an alignment of spirit, vision, and values. He noted in Cranes that he is a believer that innovation is in Cleveland's DNA, and he is all about changing the mindset of us Clevelanders to be forward-looking. A Clevelander by birth and a Clevelander forever, he wants all of us to share his mindset that a great region on a great lake starts with all of us being all in. Baiju?
Thank you, Marianne. That was a wonderful introduction, and you took so many of the points that I wanted to make and elevated brilliantly. So I appreciate that. So all in, as Marianne started, those are the two words that I want to make sure everyone remembers as you go through this conversation. And I appreciate everyone joining this discussion. And I hope that it is a dialogue with all of you during this lunch break. I'm going to share just a little bit about All In and what that means, both in terms of the values as well as the plan that we've set for the region, and also share a little bit about that plan moving into action. And from there, we'll open it up to questions. And Rachel is throwing into the chat links so that you can find some more information about the plan, but you can also find links to, follow us at GCP and follow me at Twitter if you want to continue to stay engaged as this work moves forward. So all in, let's talk about those two words. As Marianne sort of said in her introduction, some of the remarks that I've said about all in, those two words really capture what it's going to take. It's where it always starts and what the civic system is already doing to get to our vision of Cleveland becoming once again one of the great regions in the Great Lakes. Now, for those of you that are longer term Clevelanders, you'll recall that that phrase started in 2016, the year that the Cleveland Cavaliers brought us our most recent sports championship. That was the theme that they used throughout that season. And my favorite moment of the championship that I've shared with other audiences was not, the iconic blocked shot or the last shot by Kyrie, but my favorite moment of that championship run was at the beginning of each one of the championship games here in Cleveland, when instead of bringing in a celebrity to sing the national anthem, the Cavaliers chose to turn the microphone to the crowd. And the crowd stood in unison singing the national anthem, and I stood, in my family room singing along with them. And I thought that that signified that moment, along with, of course, the million plus of us that came downtown to celebrate that eventual victory. And that feeling that we had when we were all truly together, which is one of the things that sports does do for regions broadly, is the power that we then felt of being one community. And from that position, there was a sense that we could truly do anything. And that's that sense that's a sense of values. It's a spirit that we want to rekindle throughout our civic system. What I mean by that is our civic system includes our civic sector, organizations such as the Cleveland Leadership Center, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, but it also includes the public sector and the private sector. And when those three things are working together, we can do transformational things. It's not just about winning sports championships. It's about working our way through this pandemic that we've worked through because of collaboration, not just by our healthcare systems, but the healthcare systems, the private employers, the public sector systems, and many social service groups that have helped our community navigate what has been the most challenging crisis we have faced together as a community. It's an example of what's happened in the past when we've brought broader opportunity to our region. It takes those three systems work, or three sectors working in concert, working truly for the benefit of the community first and foremost, that then empowers, the transformation efforts that we can undertake. And we at the Greater Cleveland Partnership have worked with many of our partner organizations throughout our community to define what all in means. So you can read on our website about the 7 values. They all start with the word in. And the first value is about being inspired, setting bold, ambitious goals with the plans to execute them. And the last value is in unity, always remembering that we are working in partnership for the community outcome, not caring about who gets credit, who leads, or who supports. It's really about the outcome that we're pushing. And that's the value that we're trying to drive, or set of values that we're trying to drive throughout the system. Now, with that foundation, we can, in place, we've then set our sights on restoring Cleveland to being one of the great regions of the Great Lakes. Our plan, as you can read more about, started by benchmarking our region's performance in economic terms, business growth, job growth, income growth, in comparison to every other Midwest region in the country. And what you'll find over the last 10 years is that Cleveland was middle to bottom of the pack against those metrics, but also middle to bottom of the pack against many other metrics of economic performance. Now, the region is the 5-county area, the 5 counties that make up what is called Greater Cleveland. From that baseline, we then took a look at sort of what our assets were as a region and what our opportunities are that exist based on those assets. And we set our sights on restoring our position as one of the leading regions in the Midwest, or one of the great regions of the Great Lakes. To get there, it's going to take 5 interlocking priorities that we've outlined in the plan. It starts with dynamic businesses, businesses that are thriving and growing because of investments in innovation, investments in technology that allows them to be more productive, allows them to create better products, better services, to continue to compete globally. And the Smart Manufacturing Initiative that Marianne referenced in her opening remarks is one example of the region coming together, taking not just our heritage, but taking our present and moving into the future by working in concert to move small, medium, and large companies here into the smart manufacturing era so that they can continue to innovate and compete globally. The second, though, is dynamic businesses need talent to continue to grow, and they need talent at all skill levels. And so abundant talent is our second major priority. Our focus here is really ensuring that individuals, as they are moving through talent systems, whether that's at high school, community colleges, workforce programs, or in higher ed, are not only getting access to the education that is directed towards employment and fulfillment, but they're also getting internships and apprenticeships. That the more exposure they get to work experiences, the more we think that their education is not only more meaningful to them as individuals, but the more likely it is that they are going to stay in the region when they graduate, because when they get that certificate or that degree, hopefully they're getting at least one job offer to remain in the region. An example of our work in that area collectively, again, at the region, is something we recently launched called the Greater Cleveland Career Consortium, where 70 employers are working with foundations, working with CMSD as a starting school district, working with the public sector to really give high school students career exposure so that they understand what the world of opportunity is out there beyond high school, beyond what they might have been exposed to through their families, and they start to set their course on the programs and support that they're going to need to actually become part of growing industries throughout our region. But for talent to be truly abundant, you get to our third priority, and that is inclusive opportunity. We need to make sure our entire region participates. That's not just our entire region in terms of ethnic background. We know that we have a region that is 20% Black, 6% Hispanic, 2% other minorities, but it's also about gender participation and foreign born. In all of those categories, those segments of our community do not participate in the growth industries in the same proportion as they're represented in our population. And we've got to do better to make sure that we create the pathways that enable participation, but also the environments that are welcoming to individuals from diverse backgrounds throughout organizations in Greater Cleveland. And then also that this is not limited to entry level or starting one's career, but it goes into the ownership and leadership of organizations as well. So an example of our work there is the new Minority Business Center that we've launched that's supporting minority businesses in getting access to customers in our Commit Cle program. These are 27 companies throughout Greater Cleveland that are committed to not only increasing supplier diversity, but doing a wraparound set of support to ensure that those suppliers can become more than suppliers to that one organization or that one site. And they truly can become job creating, wealth creating enterprises to continue to spread opportunity throughout our region. Now, when you've got dynamic businesses and talented individuals, we know that they can work and live anywhere, especially in a technologically interconnected world. We've seen what the pandemic has done to that. We've benefited as a region from remote workers wanting to come back to our region. They come back and we want that talent, we want those businesses to be in our region. But to have them here, we need to make sure our region is appealing to them and appealing in particular to the next two generations. So taking a look at our community writ large and looking at it through the eyes of the millennials and the eyes of Generation Z, and recognizing what amenities we need to have in our community, as well as what types of neighborhoods we need to have in our community that's going to draw them to become permanent residents of our region. Our work here is not just in physical development. A lot of the attention in the newspapers is spent on physical development. It's reconnecting our region to our waterfronts, both our lake and our river, transforming our downtown neighborhoods. But again, it's also about the recreational amenities that people are looking for. So whether that's around sports, whether that's parks and trail, arts and culture, and again, all with an eye to what's missing. It's not just enough to preserve what we have. It's about ensuring that we are nurturing what's missing. My example that I like to use here is I'm a huge fan of the Cleveland Orchestra. I'm a huge fan of the Rock Hall. My kids want to see live music every night of the week in small restaurants and clubs. We need more of that nurtured throughout Cleveland. We need live music in our airports. We need to make sure we create that type of community that embodies what we know the next two generations are looking for. And we need to find ways to continue to do that throughout our region. So those are our first four priorities in the all-in plan. The fifth one that we think powers all of the other four is restoring our business confidence. What I know as a Clevelander is it's taken us a long time, and really through a concerted effort led by our friends at Destination Cleveland, we finally have convinced ourselves that Cleveland is a great place to not only live, but Cleveland's a great place to visit. And we now exude that pride broadly to our friends and families and business colleagues everywhere, and it drives them to actually visit, which drives economic activity, drives tourism, drives jobs in Greater Cleveland, and it actually drives, increasing Cleveland's reputation. But when we talk to Clevelanders, even in the business community, about Cleveland is a great place to have a career, or is Cleveland a great place to build a business, you get kind of a neutral to negative response. And a part of that reason is that there is a surprising lack of awareness of great Cleveland companies that are thriving in the 21st century. Especially when you talk to Clevelanders that have been here for a long period of time. When we talk about Cleveland business success, we often look backwards. We go back to companies that existed back in the 20th century, or even sometimes those that were founded in the 19th century. And we talk about those great companies and we talk about their legacies, and their legacies that they've left in our community are wonderful. Great philanthropy, great cultural assets that those fortunes helped drive. But when we're looking backwards, we not only miss what's going on in the present, but we miss setting our sights on the future. And what we don't see is that the legacy that has really been embedded in our region from those great companies is some of the traits that we like to talk about. It's about enterprise, it's about ambition, it's about innovation that's once again being expressed in companies throughout Greater Cleveland. What we aren't doing a great job of doing is telling those stories. And these are companies that many of you might know, but I play a parlor game when I'm in front of crowds. It's harder to do this on Zoom, where I just start running through a litany of companies. And I wonder how many of the folks in the region that are in our business communities, those are the primary audiences that I'm speaking to, are aware of these companies. And these are companies that, the first ones are usually an easy one, like Overdrive. And it's surprising how few people know about Overdrive. Now, this is the company that pioneered the electronic library that continues to power that worldwide. And that's a Cleveland company that continues to grow here on the south side of Cleveland. And so that's the easy one, because at least you've had some consumer exposure to it. But then there are many others. There's Park Place Technologies, a company that started in the early 90s that today is over 2,200 employees, worldwide, and $600 million in revenue. MRI Software. If you haven't heard of MRI, they're up to nearly 3,000 employees globally, nearly 600 of them in Solon, one of the leading real estate software companies. SPR Therapeutics, Within3, a company that just raised over $100 million in its recent financing, or Cetera, a company that recently went public in the midst of the pandemic and today has a $6 billion market capitalization. We don't talk about these companies enough, and there's many, many others that are like that. There are these great stories of Cleveland innovators, Cleveland entrepreneurs, Cleveland team members that are innovating, thriving, growing in the 21st century. And when we don't talk about it, not surprisingly, we don't then share those stories. And when we don't share it, we don't really exude that sense of Cleveland is a great place to build businesses, or Cleveland is a great place to start a career. So that's our fifth priority that we're putting as a part of the all-in plan, is starting to do a better job of promoting the success that is in our midst. And it's more than just tech businesses, it's financial services businesses, it's certainly smart manufacturing businesses, and of course our wonderful healthcare sector. And by doing that, we expect that, business leaders, business owners, civic leaders will start to exude that same pride that we have for Cleveland as a place to live and a place to visit, as Cleveland is a great place to, once again, start a career or build a business. And by doing that, it really accelerates the first four priorities. So I know I've spoken for a bit about this all-in plan, but giving you a few examples of how all of this is moving into action. There's much, much more, but I'm sensitive to the time, and I want to make sure that I open it up to answer any questions you have or hear comments that you might have as it relates to our plan. So thank you all for being with us this afternoon, and I look forward to the dialogue.
Baiju, thank you. We have a few questions that have come in. So we will start, and you've mentioned that social service organizations, nonprofits are part of this work. Can you share a bit more of your views around the role of the nonprofit community as you promote public and private partnerships?
Yeah, the nonprofit community is it's a jewel within Cleveland. We know that we are blessed with this incredible not-for-profit sector that extends across so many different topical areas, but it's also this invisible connective glue. Right? So that whether it's in the plan that we've talked about, whether it's in the Lead Safe Coalition, that we're not heavily involved in, but whether it's in other types of social services, the nonprofit and social services sector is that glue that is able to more nimbly connect resources, public resources, private resources, philanthropic resources against a task. And I think that is something that, again, we're fortunate as a community to have a wide range of very, very capable not-for-profit organizations throughout our community, for them to continue to play the role that they can as that connective tissue to really bring resources in alignment against important tasks. That's the role that I see for our not-for-profit sector.
And as you think about this, you're really looking at kind of a seismic shift in Cleveland's culture. How quickly do you feel that you can make that shift happen?
It's not me alone. It's not us alone at GCP. It really is about all of us. And I see us through each of these examples. I see the reinforcement that occurs when we strive and we achieve and we win something together that sort of emboldens us to go after the next thing. So an example of that, for recent example, we put together with Team NEO, with Jobs Ohio, with the Ohio Aerospace Institute, with the state of Ohio, and with several other partners, we put together a strategy around NASA Glenn. Now, NASA Glenn, for those of you, I'll say two things about NASA Glenn. One, it's an incredible resource that we have. It's just a marvelous scale of federal research. Some of the smartest people we have in our community work behind the walls of NASA Glenn, yet no one knows that it's there, right? It's all behind these gates, and we sometimes forget that we actually have one of the few NASA centers in the country. The second thing that's interesting about NASA Glenn is, as a federal agency, they're not allowed to advocate for themselves. They have to play the role that they are delegated by NASA leadership or by Congress, et cetera. They're not allowed to be advocates. So they rely on not only the business community, but the civic community, the federal delegation to be their advocates. So we put together a strategy, again, collectively with all of those partners, also working with our federal delegation for NASA Glenn. And in the recent bill that was passed, the recent appropriations bill, we got $80 million for NASA Glenn around some of the efforts that were identified that were, supported through the leadership of our federal delegation. Our two senators, Senators Brown and Portman, led the charge with the rest of the Ohio delegation, and that was rewarded with that. And that's emboldened everyone to say, now there's the remainder of the plan that sort of talks about what else we should go after. And as the president just released his budget proposal, all of us are gearing up to go after even more. And each of these types of examples that we go after, whether it's NASA, the Build Back Better grant, Marianne referenced the launch of the Cleveland Talent Alliance, starts to reinforce, what we can do when we actually adopt this culture, this all-in set of values that we've been developing with our partners, what more we can achieve by working on this together. So I think it's great that, we've got these examples, and I see much of the community responding in a positive way because people are focused on, it's about the community, it's about the outcome for the community. Doesn't matter what role you play in it.
So we have a question around knowing many younger professionals who might start their careers here in Cleveland, specifically around the health tech companies, then they move to other cities like Boston or Miami for career growth. Yeah. What are you looking to do for mid-career development in this area?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think this is one of those ongoing, how do we make our companies visible, more visible to members not only of our community, but we also have, reference Town Alliance as an initiative to go and make sure that we're attracting professionals at all levels back to our community as well. I think that this is the opportunity that we have. There's a lack of awareness. So a recent example from the Town Alliance, the Leadership Center was involved with GCP, with Destination Cleveland, Team NEO, Cleveland State University, and many Engage Cleveland and many other partners, was this Women in Cybersecurity conference that was held here in Cleveland, I think 2 weeks ago, where over 2,300 young women to mid-career women came into Cleveland to learn about cybersecurity. It's their annual national conference. And we put together with our employers and partners a Cleveland Street and the hiring fair, so that as you're walking through the hiring fair, that it's a part of this annual event, you start to see that there are 15 employers there from the healthcare sector and financial services and startup companies that are all interested in recruiting cybersecurity professionals. And hopefully through that, you start to say, well, for my next career move, whether you're in Cleveland today, or whether you are thinking about Cleveland because maybe you experienced Cleveland through the conference, or you were in Cleveland for higher ed, or for maybe you're from Cleveland as a native, you now start to say, I can actually see how my career develops in Greater Cleveland. We need to do that in healthcare. We need to do that in financial services and in all these sectors to show individuals the pathway to that. I mean, I'm always surprised at how few people, we talked about the little parlor game I play, and maybe, you're in healthcare and you don't really know about Park Place Technologies or MRI Software because they're not healthcare companies. But I'm always surprised that healthcare people don't know about other healthcare companies in Cleveland. And it's amazing how, that occurs despite us being kind of a big city, small town type of culture. We need to do a better job of bringing that visibility.
The pandemic has been especially hard on women in the workforce, mainly in part due to childcare issues. How is GCP thinking about childcare and early education in your plan to support workforce development?
That's a great question. And I'll be candid, it hasn't been something we have spent a lot of time directly engaged in as an organization. We know a number of our employers are grappling with this, and we are probably most connected to it as we help them think about remote work And what does remote work mean for employment centers, whether it's downtown Cleveland, Mayfield Village, Solon, Independence, that are now grappling with the changes that might occur because of employers enabling flexibility that has been needed for parents in particular, but for other sort of caregivers as well, to enable individuals to continue to participate in the workforce through the use of technology.
And what kind of work has been done on attracting and retaining international students and workers to Cleveland?
Yeah, not enough. Not enough at all. So a part of the Talent Alliance, another participant I forgot to mention, is Global Cleveland. And it's an organization that's near and dear to my heart. I was the founding chairman of Global Cleveland, and love their mission. We have something like 6,000 international students in our midst at our higher ed institutions. The effort that we're launching in partnership with Global Cleveland, Cleveland State, and Case Western as a starting point is an internship effort. As we talked about, our focus is really making sure that students that are in our local high institutions or local programs are getting that kind of work-based learning experience as a part of their degree. International students are absolutely a part of that effort. They're a big population at both of those institutions. This will not be limited to those two institutions, but it's a starting point, and we're closing in on hiring the director of partnerships for that effort.
As you look at the all-in plan and the goals that you have, how will you be measuring success?
Yeah, great question as well. So having come from the business sector and being a metrics guy through and through, we not only have got the 3 long-term goals that we put out there for 2030, but for each of our priorities and for each of the initiatives underneath our priority, we have a very specific 2022 goal. And these 2022 goals are diverse. Some of them are related to sort of talent, participation in programs like internships and apprenticeships. When it's around appealing community, it's around not only level of real estate activity that's occurring in targeted geographies, so kind of dollars of construction that's been permitted, meaning completed, but it's also around major milestones that are related to longer term endeavors like lake and riverfront. But it's also things like air flights, the number of flights going daily out of Hopkins. So what's the average over the course of a year, and how do we recover ourselves back towards where we were pre-pandemic to make sure we're able to provide that amenity to all of our residents, whether it's for business travel or leisure travel. So each of our 14 strategies underneath our 5 priorities has a targeted metric for 2022 that we're holding the region accountable for. Again, this isn't about our organization, it's really about the system. And using that to then continue to ask the hard questions of, are we on trajectory, are we off trajectory? If we're off trajectory, what needs to change? Is it the strategy? Is it the set of partners? Is it the level of resources? Is it something else, so that we push the trajectory back to where we need to get to make sure that we have the outcomes we're seeking in 2030?
So what would you imagine, or what do you see as the greatest obstacles to success in our region, and how might those of us here on the call today help you and GCP overcome those obstacles?
Great question. Our number one obstacle is attitude. I think Clevelanders don't dream big enough. Our aspirations, whether it's for civic endeavors, business endeavors, we need to get that ambition threaded throughout our community again. We need to have the confidence that if we set bold visions and bold goals, that we'll actually achieve them and not be afraid of aspiring for something at that level. I think too often, we don't strive. We don't strive enough in Cleveland for the greatness that we can achieve. We do have examples of organizations that only strive for world-class recognition, world-class excellence, whether it's in healthcare, in the arts community, some of our certainly business community organizations that compete every day on a global stage and aspire to be number one in their fields. We need to take lessons from the arts community and from the healthcare community and those business organizations. That is what we need to have throughout our community.
Well, Baiju, we are very excited for the vision and the goals and all that's to come. And we thank you for your leadership and all that's happening at GCP. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here, Rachel and Marianne, and for all of you that are on this chat. Follow us, get engaged with us. We need everyone to be all in. 2 words for you guys to remember. Take care.